Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're going exploring this pretty wild world of AI and copyright.
Oh, yeah.
And specifically, we're going to be looking at this case of OpenAI and ChatGPT,
Right.
which is facing a pretty massive lawsuit from some big Canadian media names.
Huge, yeah.
Yeah, we're talking CBC, Post Media, Toronto Star.
Wow.
Even the Globe and Mail. They're all taking on this tech giant. And yeah, the implications of this are pretty huge.
Yeah, it is fascinating because, OpenAI is valued at, what, $157 billion?
Wow.
And this isn't even their first time facing this kind of legal challenge, right? They're also fighting lawsuits in the U.S., including one from the New York Times. So this case could really set a major precedent.
Yeah, it really makes you think about, like, in the age of AI, who owns information and how do we even begin to determine its value?
I think that's really the core issue here, right? These outlets are accusing OpenAI of copyright infringement.
Right.
Saying that they use their articles to train ChatGPT without their permission. And they're arguing that scraping data on this massive of a scale is a direct violation of copyright law and their terms of service.
So they're basically saying that OpenAI is using their content without paying for it, and that this gives ChatGPT an unfair advantage.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like building a house using someone else's bricks without asking them.
Right.
Now, OpenAI isn't denying that they use this data, but they're arguing that using publicly available articles is similar to someone just reading the news, which is legal.
Okay. But that seems like a pretty bold claim considering the scale of the data we're talking about here.
Right.
I mean, it's not like one person reading a couple articles.
Yeah.
It's a massive data set being fed into an AI.
You're absolutely right. And this is where things get kind of tricky.
Okay.
OpenAI did actually win a similar case in the U.S. against a news outlet called Raw Story.
No.
But they're still battling lawsuits from the New York Times and a group of authors.
Okay.
What makes this Canadian case particularly interesting is the potential role of fair dealing.
Fair dealing.
Which is a concept within Canadian copyright law.
I've heard of fair dealing, but I'm not exactly sure how that applies to AI. Could you maybe break that down?
Yeah, so fair dealing allows for the use of copyrighted material without permission for certain purposes, like research or private study or education. So think of it like this kind of built-in exception to those strict copyright rules.
Okay.
However, there's no specific category under fair dealing for AI training.
So this case could essentially determine whether training AI falls under fair dealing.
Exactly.
That's huge.
Yeah, this could be a landmark case in Canada, setting a precedent for how AI is allowed to learn and evolve.
Wow.
This case could literally impact what you see online, as websites might have to explicitly state whether their content can be used for training or not.
Now let's get into the content itself, news articles. Does the fact that we're dealing with news, which is primarily factual reporting, does that impact the case at all?
Yeah, it definitely adds another layer of complexity.
Oh, okay.
Copyright law doesn't protect facts themselves.
Right.
So the media outlets might have a harder time claiming direct ownership over the information presented in their articles.
Okay.
They'd need to prove that ChatGPT's output is substantially similar to their original work.
Okay.
Meaning it's not just using facts, but mimicking their specific style and presentation.
So it's not just about using the information, but how that information is presented.
Right.
Can you give me an example of how ChatGPT's output might be considered substantially similar to a news article?
Sure. Imagine an article about a recent scientific discovery.
Okay.
If ChatGPT, after being trained on that article, generates a response that not only includes those factual findings, but also mirrors the article's tone or structure or even specific phrasing that could be argued as substantially similar. It's not just spitting out the facts. It's about recreating the essence of the original work.
Right. But even if OpenAI successfully argues that they're not directly copying these articles, isn't there still the issue of websites having terms of service?
Oh, absolutely.
That users agree to?
Yeah.
So could that play a role?
For sure. Many websites, including news outlets, state in their terms of service that content can only be used for personal, non-commercial purposes.
Right.
So by using this data to train a commercial product, like ChatGPT, OpenAI, could be seen as violating these terms, even if they manage to sidestep the copyright issue related to the factual content itself.
So this case could hinge on whether training an AI is considered personal use or commercial use.
Exactly.
That's a distinction that could have massive implications for the future of AI development.
Precisely. And this brings us to an even bigger question. When you're browsing news online, are you giving permission for its use beyond simply reading it?
Wow.
It's something we all need to consider as AI becomes more and more integrated into our lives.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
This whole case really kind of highlights the tension between content creators and AI developers.
Right.
There was this story recently that kind of drives this home. A major book publisher offered authors a measly $2,500
to use their entire works for AI training.
Wow, $2,500 for a whole book. That seems really low.
Yeah. And it definitely sparked a lot of outrage amongst authors who felt like their work was being drastically undervalued.
Yeah.
And it raises this crucial question: what is information worth in the age of AI?
Right.
If a machine can learn and mimic human creativity, how do we properly compensate the original creators?
Yeah, it seems like we're grappling with a fundamental shift in how we value creative work.
Yeah.
This case could have ripple effects on how artists and writers are compensated.
Oh, absolutely.
In the future.
It feeds into this larger debate about AI regulation.
Right.
Some people think we need entirely new laws to govern this technology, while others think that the existing laws are sufficient.
Yeah, I can see both sides of that argument. What are some of the concerns driving the calls for stricter regulation?
Well, one major worry is the potential for bias and discrimination.
Okay.
So AI models are trained on massive data sets, right? And if those data sets reflect existing societal biases, the AI can perpetuate and even amplify those biases.
So if an AI is trained on data that primarily features images of, say, men in leadership roles,
right,
it might struggle to accurately represent or recognize women in those same roles.
Exactly. And that bias can have real-world consequences.
Wow.
Imagine an AI-powered hiring system.
Oh, wow.
That unfairly screens out qualified candidates based on their gender or race.
Right.
Or an AI-powered loan approval system
that
discriminates against certain communities.
Those are some serious implications.
Yeah.
So regulation could help ensure that AI is developed and used fairly and ethically.
That's the goal.
Okay.
The proponents of regulation argue that we need clear guidelines and standards to prevent AI from being used in harmful ways.
Right.
They also argue that regulation can foster public trust in AI by ensuring that it's developed responsibly.
But I imagine there's some pushback against regulation.
Oh, yeah.
Especially from the tech industry.
For sure.
What are some of their concerns?
Well, some argue that excessive regulation could stifle innovation and slow down the development of beneficial AI applications.
Okay.
They fear that too many rules will make it harder for companies to compete in the global AI race.
So it's a delicate balancing act.
Yeah.
We want to encourage AI development.
Right.
But also safeguard against potential harm.
Exactly.
It reminds me of the early days of the internet.
Yeah.
So much potential, but also a lot of unknowns and potential downsides.
You're right, there are parallels there. And it's worth noting that the Canadian government is currently holding consultations on copyright law and how it relates to AI.
Oh, okay.
This case will undoubtedly influence those discussions.
It seems like no matter which way this case goes, it's going to have a significant impact on how we think about and regulate AI.
I think so.
It's fascinating to see how a seemingly technical legal battle is actually raising these profound questions about creativity and ownership.
Yeah.
And even what it means to be human in a world increasingly shaped by AI.
It really underscores how quickly technology is evolving and how our laws and ethical frameworks are struggling to keep up.
Right.
This case is a powerful reminder that we need to be actively involved in shaping the future of AI.
So let's look ahead a bit. What are some potential scenarios that could play out?
Okay.
What happens if the Canadian media outlets win this case against OpenAI?
Well, if they succeed, it could have a major impact on how AI companies operate, not just in Canada, but potentially globally.
Wow.
It could force them to be much more cautious about the data they use to train their models.
So that would mean a significant shift in the way AI is developed.
Yeah.
No more scraping vast amounts of data from the internet without explicit consent.
Exactly. It would create a much higher bar for these AI companies to clear.
Oh.
And it could slow down the pace of development, at least in the short term. But supporters of this outcome would argue that it's a necessary step to protect intellectual property rights and ensure that content creators are fairly compensated.
On the other hand, what happens if OpenAI wins? What kind of message would that send?
An OpenAI victory could reinforce the argument that existing copyright law isn't equipped to handle the complexities of AI.
Yeah.
It could strengthen the push for new legislation specifically designed to address AI development and data usage.
So even if OpenAI wins, it could still lead to stricter regulations for AI.
That's certainly possible. It would put even more pressure on policymakers to find that balance between encouraging innovation and protecting individual rights in the age of AI.
It seems like this case is acting as like a catalyst, pushing us to confront these big questions about the future of AI and its role in society.
You're absolutely right. It's a landmark case that's shining a spotlight on the complex ethical and legal challenges posed by this powerful technology.
Yeah.
And it's a conversation that's just beginning.
So even though we're focused on this specific case in Canada, it sounds like the implications are truly global.
Absolutely. What happens in Canada with this case could set precedents and influence legal battles and regulatory discussions around the world.
Wow.
AI is a global phenomenon, and the rules we establish now will shape its development and impact for years to come.
It's a lot to process, to be
I
honest.
know.
It feels like we're at the edge of a new era, and we're still figuring out the rules of the game.
It's definitely a time of rapid change and uncertainty.
Yeah.
But it's also a time of immense opportunity.
Yeah.
AI has the potential to revolutionize countless aspects of our lives.
So while there are risks and challenges to navigate, there's also a lot to be excited about.
Absolutely. And I think this case, even with all its complexities and potential controversies, is ultimately a positive development.
Yeah.
It's forcing us to have these crucial conversations and to collectively decide what kind of future we want to build with AI.
It's a good reminder that we're not just passive observers in this technological revolution.
Right.
We all have a role to play in shaping its trajectory.
Exactly. Whether you're a content creator, a tech developer, a policymaker, or simply someone who uses AI in their daily life, you have a voice in this debate.
Right.
And it's a voice that deserves to be heard.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into this AI copyright battle, what's the key takeaway for you? What should people be paying attention to as this story unfolds?
Well, I think the most important thing to recognize is that this case is about so much more than just a legal dispute between a company and some outlets, you know?
Right.
It's really symbolic of these larger questions we're facing as a society about the role of AI.
Yeah, it's like this case is a canary in the coal mine,
Exactly.
warning us about the potential issues we need to address as AI becomes more powerful.
It's a wake-up call to think critically about the implications of AI, to engage in these conversations, and to demand transparency and accountability from those developing and using this technology.
Right. We can't just assume everything will work itself out.
Yeah.
We need to be active in shaping the future of AI.
Absolutely. And that starts with understanding the issues. This case is a great example of how complex legal battles can actually touch on really fundamental questions about creativity,
Yeah.
ownership, and the value of human expression in a world increasingly influenced by machines.
So what can people do like today to stay informed and engaged in this conversation?
Well, I encourage you to follow the developments in this case. Read articles and opinions from different perspectives and talk about it with friends, family, colleagues.
Right.
The more we discuss these issues, the better equipped we'll be to make informed decisions about the future of AI.
Yeah, it's a reminder that this isn't just a debate for tech experts and lawyers. This is a conversation that affects all of us.
It is, and it's a conversation that's only going to become more important as AI continues to evolve. The choices we make today will have lasting impacts.
We've covered a lot of ground today, from the specifics of this Canadian lawsuit to the broader implications for AI development and regulation. Any final thoughts you want to leave us with?
I think the most important thing to remember is that AI is a tool.
Right.
Like any tool, it can be used for good or for bad.
Right.
It's up to us as a society to decide how we use this powerful technology and to ensure that it serves humanity.
Yeah, that's a powerful reminder that we're not just along for the ride. We have the power to shape the future of AI. And that's both a responsibility and an incredible opportunity.
It is.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of AI and copyright. We hope it's given you something to think about and inspired you to stay engaged in this crucial debate. Until next time.